Welcome back. We are talking about type 2 diabetes here, and we now know it is primarily a lifestyle disease. But we also need to watch out for the impact diabetes could have on our life. We spoke to Dr. Subhash Wangnu on this, and this is what he had to say.
Common problems associated with the long-term uncontrolled diabetes include damage to the nerves which supply to the leg is called the neuropathy, and which is the commonest cause of the leg amputation in our country and diabetic foot. The second, it involves the kidney function test, and it is a leading cause of dialysis and end-stage renal disease in our country. And third, it affects the eye function, and it's called the diabetic retinopathy, is a major cause of blindness in our country. Apart from three major organs involved, the commonest cause of death in diabetics are primarily because of the involvement of the cardiovascular system. Heart attacks, brain attacks, these are the two major macrovascular complications which comes in the life of a diabetic if he is not able to control his diabetes in the long run.
So the question now arises, if ever I am diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, how should I manage it? Dr. Mittal, diet, that plays an important role. Nobody wants to diet, but if you had to explain what is the particular diet that a diabetes patient or somebody who's likely, because of hereditary reasons, prone to get diabetes, how should they go about it?
Let's talk of the basic principles. One is we need to avoid simple sugars as far as possible. We should really limit their intake. So simple carbohydrates are out, but complex carbohydrates, that is fiber-containing carbohydrates like multigrain, atta or stuff like that, is very much in. So you replace your carbohydrates with complex carbohydrates. Let's say, as I said, fruits is another example of some fruits of complex carbohydrates. So that is one principle. The other is to reduce your overall fat intake, but in particular saturated fat and trans fat. The third is that we need to ensure adequate protein, because in Indian diets often we have largely carb-based diets, so our protein intakes are not that great. The fourth is not to have like one heavy meal and long gaps between meals. So small and frequent eating is what is recommended with adequate amounts of carbohydrates, some amount of fat and protein, and adequate greens to give you your minerals and vitamins.
We come to exercising. How important is exercising, Dr. Mohan?
Exercise, the second pillar in the management of diabetes, if you will. For most people, a walk in the morning or in the evening, a brisk walk, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, up to 1 hour, should be good enough. But there are others who would like to, they say it's very boring, and so they would like to play tennis or badminton or swimming or jogging or cycling, and there are others who like to mix and match. So 3 days a week they would do something and another 3 days would do something else. There are people who are great fans of yoga, so there's nothing wrong in doing that as well. Although for the cardiovascular fitness, some cardio exercises are good, but if you bring in the yoga part, especially the pranayama and the yoga, that brings in the relaxation. But it's entirely individualized. As long as you can do 30 minutes of exercise 5 times a week minimum, I think that's great. And you can not only prevent diabetes, but you can also control diabetes. So exercise is something, as Dr. Mittal said, diet is for everyone. And so exercise is also for everyone. Doesn't mean if you don't have diabetes, you don't need to do exercise. Everybody has to do it, but the person with diabetes really has to do it.
Dr. Chaudhary, any exercising tips for people taking insulin and non-insulin drugs?
In the context of these drugs, which can lower your glucose, sometimes they can cause too low a blood sugar, hypoglycemic shocks, reactions, as you may. So if you exercise, you increase the risks of those hypoglycemic reactions. So it doesn't mean that you don't exercise, but those individuals have to be cautioned that you have this added risk. So you take the precautions, you take adequate snacks before you exercise, don't exercise long hours, don't exercise at unusual times or at unusual pace. So if you do that, plan it properly, then you should be continuing your exercise.
Dr. Mohan, if you talk about medication, we know there is no definite cure for diabetes, right?
There is no cure as such as one would define it. A cure would mean that you would never ever get the disease back. But it really doesn't matter. Even if you don't have a cure, today the medication has improved so much, the therapies have improved so much that one can have a long and healthy life despite diabetes.
Are there any side effects of taking oral medication or insulin, Dr. Mittal?
See, there's been no medication developed that doesn't produce any side effect. The newer drugs for diabetes, especially the drugs from the incretin pathway, are actually drugs that do not produce low blood sugar.
Right.
And do not produce weight gain. So a judicious combination of these drugs with existing therapies will actually go a long way. And therefore, with more and more advances in this field, I think the side effects are going down,
Right.
and the efficacy is going up.
If we talk about diabetes monitoring, Dr. Chaudhary, how should that be done and how frequently should that be done?
Well, obviously everything has to be individualized. Someone who comes into a hospital with sugars of 500 plus needs to have the sugars checked every hour. But for an average patient who comes to the clinic, we need to have, and who is on maybe diet and exercise or maybe small doses of tablets, we need to check the sugars maybe once a month,
Right.
once every 2 months even sometimes. And as we now know, type 2 diabetes is not just about blood glucose. People have raised blood pressure, they have abnormal lipids, cholesterol. So all these have to be measured. And then it's a disease of complications. So we have to screen for those complications ever frequently at appropriate intervals. For example, one should do an eye checkup at least once a year. We should do a special test. We call it a microalbumin test from the urine, which tells us at the very earliest point if the kidneys are going to be damaged because of diabetes, and we can take precautionary measures at that point of time. We need to have an ECG done at least once in a year. So all these should be part of routine follow-up monitoring of a patient with diabetes.
Before we end, can we have final comments? Dr. Mohan, any message for our viewers?
If you have anybody in your family who has diabetes, please assume that you are also at risk. And the good news is that by just walking and following a healthy diet and maintaining your ideal body weight, you can almost totally prevent diabetes. That's a message I would like to give.
Dr. Chaudhary?
Well, the message will be, in case you have missed the bus, if you have not been able to prevent diabetes altogether, it's not the end of the day. So take control of diabetes. Do not allow diabetes to take control of you.
Dr. Mittal?
I think in addition to lifestyle and prevention, the key message is if you have diabetes, we have the tools to manage your diabetes. So if you're good with your medication, good with your monitoring, seeing your doctor regularly, there is no reason why you should suffer any of the end effects of diabetes.
So awareness, intervention, management and a healthy lifestyle are the important aspects of fighting with diabetes. I thank you all for taking out time for us. And I hope the special program on diabetes was helpful and informative. Thank you for watching.